across the United States. And it's that treasure trove, if you will, of successful community building efforts that we've been learning from and where we've been trying to get into discussions with our now friends and colleagues across the United States. And that's what we want to report out to you in the next little while. When I think about those stories and what an incredible privilege it's been to collect them, I think too about what a wonderful moment this is for us to be thinking about these stories, right? Because this is a moment when government is reinventing itself. Government is in all kinds of trouble. We know that. We know that the discussion here in Washington, where we sit tonight, is about a kind of reconception of what a public sector is about. We know, too, that the whole economy, global as well as national and regional and local, is different than it was 20 years ago. And that these adjustments that people are going through all over the United States are absolutely fundamental. One of the things it's doing is, at this very moment, it's making people all over the United States say, let's take another look at our communities. What do we have here to build on? How can we recreate economy and polity so that in the 21st century, we've got a platform to stand on and allow us to adjust? So that's the reality that our success stories speak to, and that's what we want to point to as we go through these next 3 discussions with you all. When I think about the success stories that we found, a number of them come to mind. But I suppose somewhere near the top of my list, and I want to just tell you a couple to kick us off here. Somewhere near the top of my list is a group of friends in the Roxbury neighborhood of Boston, in the Dudley Street area of the Roxbury neighborhood in Boston, where, in the only case we know about at this point, a whole transfer of civic authority, of government authority, has happened with this local neighborhood group. It's a group called the Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative, and here's just the beginning of their story.
Now in its 8th year, the Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative was this community's response to decades of disinvestment and government neglect. It is only 1.5 miles from the office towers of downtown Boston, but half the land in this area of Roxbury and Dorchester, Massachusetts, lies vacant, more than 300 lots. Over 40% of the families live below the poverty level. Once a thriving neighborhood, white flight to the suburbs in the 1950s and 60s led to disinvestment and arson. With the support of the Riley Foundation, the Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative formed as a community-controlled group representing residents, agencies, businesses, and religious organizations. Their mission is nothing less than the rebuilding of the entire community, from affordable housing to community services to the creation of jobs. One of the first campaigns was to clean up the neighborhood and close down the trash transfer stations.
Of all the communities in Massachusetts, they picked this community to do their illegal dumping. Why did they do that?
The community prevailed and the transfer stations were locked. Over the next 2 years, DSNI completed a comprehensive development plan, which would fill the vacant land with affordable housing, community centers, retail space, and playgrounds. The plan was later adopted by the City of Boston as its official development plan.
Today we come together to celebrate a very unique plan that stresses services to rebuild the spirit of this community as well as to develop the neighborhood.
DSNI went on to make history as the first grassroots group in the country to win the power of eminent domain over all vacant land in the neighborhood. The community will use this power to become the nation's first inner-city neighborhood to implement its own development plan.
So there you have one story which we find immensely rich in terms of the lessons it has to teach. Ordinary people saying, everybody in Boston has a plan for our neighborhood but us. We'll make our own plan, and it'll be so professional and so widely owned that we'll take it to the city, and the city will grant us then the power that we need to make that plan real. It's a real story, it seems to me, of a community victory. Another story that we've learned an awful lot from is a story that's a little closer to home for John and me. It's a story that comes off the west side of Chicago, where we've spent an awful lot of time in our years in Chicago. The community is called West Garfield Park. And there, about 15 years ago, a little church with 40 people in it sort of faced a do-or-die decision. Do we pick up and leave and give up in this church, or do we stay? And if we stay, how can we stay and be effective? Was what these 40 folks were saying to each other at that point. Well, they prayed about it, and they thought about it, and they made the decision to stay. And what we have now is the story that has unfolded when those folks said, we're going to be serious. And when they started looking around and saying, well, what do we have to build on? And when they found, well, it's just us in a mortgage-free church building, the first thing they did was remortgage the church building, buy one of those old, abandoned, roach-infested 3 flats down the street, and then troop down after church every Sunday to rebuild that thing by themselves. And after 6 months, they had a spanking new apartment building. They turned it over, and with the proceeds, they bought another one. Now it's 15 years later, and what we're dealing with at Bethel New Life is a $10 million a year community development corporation, a group that in fact now employs 500 people in the community, right, providing jobs for folks, a group that has built or rehabilitated over 1,000 units of affordable housing for people in that neighborhood, so that you've got a kind of beacon of hope out there now. I want to now introduce you to the vice president of the board of Bethel New Life, Sheila Radford Hill, who can tell a little bit more about that story herself from her own point of view. Here's Sheila.
The West Garfield Austin community is a community, even at that time, that was under great stress, and I wasn't sure what I could do and how I could fit in. And that's when I changed my membership to Bethel Lutheran Church and got involved in Bethel New Life as a ministry, as a commitment to doing something about the problems in the neighborhood that I live in. So I've seen abandonment and blight. I've seen the flight of manufacturing and jobs. And I've seen it pretty much firsthand because my parents have lived here for all that time and because I grew up in this type of situation. So I've really seen a lot of things that have happened in this community. I've seen a lot of efforts to change the community. And I've been heartened by some, disappointed by others. But I've been here a while and I've seen these changes. On the positive side, Bethel has meant a sense of hope, a sense that people can work together to solve problems, a sense that we can empower ourselves. We can learn, we can take control over our fate and our destiny, and we can really work together to address some of the issues that we face.
A sense of hope indeed. That's what Bethel New Life has provided for the west side of Chicago. And that's a hopeful story that people all over the United States who know about communities and communities building themselves from the inside out know about. Everybody knows about Bethel.